Start streaming.
Hey, did it break by the way? Yeah. Do you know how to mute? You want to let you and your MacBook grow?
Okay, first attendance, Alejandra. Where? There we go. Didn't you used to be over there? Oh, smart. Annabelle? Anderson? Anderson? Hello, Mr. Anderson. Hold it. My school just logged in. I can continue there. And Hud? Archie?
Yeah.
Ben?
Yeah.
Brandon?
Yeah.
Casey?
Here.
Clara? Felix? Hugo?
Here.
2 Kates.
Here.
I only heard one. Kate. W? Where's other Kate? Oh, you weren't loud enough. Kieran?
Here.
Lily?
Here.
Lisa?
Yeah.
Naomi?
Here.
Parker? Parker? No Parker. Thomas?
Here.
Timmy? Violet?
Here.
William?
Yeah.
Zane?
Yeah.
Zoe?
Here.
And so I need to investigate Parker. Parker? Welcome to class. And okay. First, oh, you can't see what's going on here. So let's get this set up before I do anything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's too many. Yeah, let's go through it. Seven. Okay, that'll work. William, Kay, and Brendan join, split up, don't go together, join 2 other groups, or 1 each. You can't join 2 groups as 1 person. So we have groups 1 through 7. Find your people, find a pen, find a spot on the board. copy. Group? Each group needs to send me a person to get a copy.
Who should I go over?
Your name isn't up there? No. Oh, right, because you came in late. I'd already taken your name off that. No. Join a group that only has 3 members. There's a whole box of them behind the door there. Any other group need a piece of paper? Any other groups? Okay. Similar to the last time we did this. Oh. I cleverly thought I had it ready to go. And I did not. So, these are numbered. Work area. Main screen. Apply. Okay, so what I would like your group to do, and I'm going to assign a different one to each one of you, is to come up with multiple questions, each one a different area. So, for example, you are driving over the speed limit because you need to take someone to the hospital that is in need of urgent care. How fast over the speed limit can you legally go? That's a legal question. How fast do people usually drive over the speed limit? That would be a cultural question. Are you within the cultural expectations of yourself? I have noticed that you can drive about 10K over and almost never get pulled over. Cops just go, eh. That is not legal advice, because even 1K over, they can give you a ticket. Is it acceptable to risk harming others in order to benefit one who is clearly in need? That is an ethical question. So, at least 3 questions. This first one will be group 1. This second one will be group 2. This third one will be group 3. And you're never going to guess what the fourth one's going to be. Group 7, 6, and 5, and then 4. Just to make it interesting. 3 questions and identify which areas they are in. Talk with your group. The person who writes cannot be the person who talks. Do you need to see your group numbers again? Group numbers, if you need to refer to them. Good. What do you want? 824. Go-go enemies? Saying go-go enemies? Anime. Okay.
What is incorporation? Legally? Yeah. It's not legal. Is it legal? How much money? It's like the other two is wrong. It's really not. From you, you know, one person is the corporation.
In one culture, 13-year-old girls leave school.
Is the show worth? Yes, the show is worth breaking the law. Okay, that will be a. In your culture, are you willing to take
Your group 4?
what?
Your group 4?
Watch that.
Group 5? What? Do you need to see your groups again?
Stop talking about One Piece.
What group number are you? There you go. So you're on the first question, the first page. Write your group number on the board, and then I can figure out that everybody's got it correct. Group 2, group C. What group number are you? 7. You guys are 4. You guys are 1, 3, and 5. I don't think we have any duplicates.
Of course it's not legal. There's no ever where it's illegal. Okay. I don't think that's what you do. What else do we do?
Is it legal?
I mean, like, you could ask like, is their culture, like, is it societally acceptable?
Okay, we got 3 here.
Yeah, like when you move.
Is that in China? That's like normal.
Identify each type of question as well. So just a question. Is there cultural legal? You can think of that as cultural.
Is it morally?
Hold it. Why are you asking me? You use the term. Oh, you put the term down without knowing what it means, and then came up with a question. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, those are examples. Last night we also did religious questions. You can pick any area. Yeah. You didn't have those just as examples. But they're good. If you do those 3, you're not going to go wrong.
It's sort of like medical.
Cultural.
Is the show one? No, and then it's going to be is the show even good? What no, is it worth the money? Like, does it have any value that you're like, I want to support this? Or is it like
Please don't.
I don't know what else.
So you're coming with one more question. You guys come
Yeah,
with
to
one more question.
your people.
We got one question. So we identify the got 2 there.
No, actually. No, think of the one that has Netflix there. Do your peers do this as well? It will. Yeah, right. Like your peers. Because, like, if you think about it, like literally everybody kind of drives over the speed limit, just a little bit. So that makes it okay if other people do it. Yeah, like doing 80 in a school zone. I go 90%.
The little ones are called speed bumps.
Yeah. Especially the walking ones. They're like a moving targets, like slalom.
Extra point.
Except the smaller the target, the bigger the point. Like a baby's 20.
You know, you have to raise the oils from your hand.
Drives through New York.
We got 3.
Whenever he hits someone.
We're almost done here.
Oh my god, your people.
It's like 5.
It's so like indifferent.
Yeah, it's Friday.
Got a 3rd one?
Just because I
Charter acquired.
Why
If one guy was just he is becoming like one. I'm gonna draw Archie. I'm gonna draw more medicines to be I like I read after like right before the
No, that's not legal.
so that I can watch them instead of
One more.
then I like halfway keeping up with the episode. So I didn't like those. And it wasn't even fighting. It was just like introducing it to
Okay,
Okay, if I get your attention. As the last group is writing the last one, I'll just start going around. So the person who wrote is not allowed to speak. And of the two who are left, one person can do the first couple of questions and explain what they are, the second person can do the last one, or vice versa. Go. Group 3. I'm going to start right here.
Is there a law that
1 second. Not everybody. There we go.
In one culture, 13-year-old girls leave school and are married to 20-year-old men. When these people immigrate to America, should this behavior be considered acceptable?
Otherwise known as Russell Brand.
First one is there a law that permits / forbids this?
What kind of question is that? Okay.
Is it accepted in both the immigrant's culture and the American culture? And we said that was cultural.
That sounds irrelevant.
Uses the word culture a lot. And then
Well, other than it uses the word cultural a lot, and it does, but if you didn't use the word, why is that a cultural question and not like, is it accepted could be an ethical question?
because it's comparing both the belief systems and like comparing and contrasting to see what, like if they're accepted.
I like that term, belief systems. Culture is a lot like a belief system. Last one, who's doing the last one?
is it okay to take a young girl out of school and away from home to marriage?
Is it okay? And that is your ethical question. Education is a right. By the way, education being a right, it might interest you to know that in Canada, there is no such thing as parental rights. They do not exist. You can search the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. They will nowhere be mentioned. So if parents are fighting for any reason, everything has to be termed in the best interest of the child, which is why you can go to the local pharmacy and buy the morning after pill or a whole host of other medications on your own because it's in your best interest. Your parents don't necessarily have a right to know. Why if you go to see a doctor, you have a lot of privacy. It's called, we have the Infants Act in BC, and it is one of the strongest protections we have across Canada for the rights of the child. Okay, group 5.
So our question was, your friend wants you to try some steroids and help him get more fit. So our first question is like, is it allowed or like would there be any consequences, like, or legal action taken, and then some that you don't have one. And then the second one is, would it benefit you to take them? And it's like scientific.
Ooh, you picked an example that wasn't mentioned on the first one. Nicely done. Went outside the question group. And last question.
And what is the reason your friend wants you to take the steroids?
Say that again.
The reason, what is the reason your friend wants you to take the steroids?
That's why is that ethical? That is interesting.
Well, it's like, are they forcing you to take the steroids? Like, are they like asking you to do it in an ethical way?
I don't know. I think I need some more details on why that's an ethical question as opposed to like cultural to your peer group. Like maybe, because I'm getting the impression your peer group may use steroids in this particular version of the question. Are they asking, or are you asking them like, is it an honest choice or do you feel peer pressure? I think might fit the way I'm reading it as a cultural question. Friendship can be an ethical obligation, so I can also see how it'd be friendship, but I think a little bit more tweaking would be needed for that. A little bit more details. But if it's a regular versus non-regular reason, I mean, classically, when someone asks you to do drugs or anything you're not supposed to do, they don't wear a large trench coat and speak heavily and go, "Hey, man," and do it like the old '80s warning ads about drugs said. They're just your friends and they're offering you stuff, and they have really good reasons for you to do it. Almost everything is a free choice. Practical. Group one.
Yep.
Go.
So our question was, if it was like life, right? If your wife is dying and you can't get like the medicine required for her to like live, is it all like it's all right to like steal it? Is it you can't afford it? Our first question was, is it ethical to steal for loved ones? And yeah, like if they need it like really badly and they're not like afford it.
Yeah.
You should be able to get it.
Yeah.
Our second,
Life will
that was
ruin.
ethical question. Our
Who's
second
doing number two? Are you
I'm
going to keep going?
Our second question was legal. Should primary medicine be legal? Yeah, everyone should be able to have access to like a standard line of medicine, and people should be able to pay for better medicine.
So when you say legal, are you meaning free at the point of access, as in like it's part of your taxes or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That is a legal question. I don't think legal is necessarily the right word there, but should you construct that might be a legal question, or if it's misclassified.
And then last question is social. Should medicine be accessible for everyone? It should be. Everyone should be able to have medicine.
Now both 2 and 3 are shoulds. So 3 is and the way you said it, like I think it should. Is 3 another ethical question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've got 2 ethical questions there. Cultural might be more like, would it be acceptable for everyone? Is it something that Group 4.
Our question was, if you apply for a job and the employer requests access to your health records and your genetic tests, like do you have
One
to give
second.
it to them?
Gentlemen, if you want to get the eraser and erase that and then focus.
Did you have a question?
No.
Okay. If you apply for a job and your employer requests access to your health records and your genetic tests, like do you have to give it to them? So our first question was like, do I actually have to give the employer access to my health records? And it'd be a legal question.
Okay. Our second question was, why does the employer need it? Like, for what purpose? And we have that under sociological. And then
Explain why it would be sociological or cultural.
You pick sociological.
But part of that is, did you explain to the rest of the group?
No.
Okay, explain and then you can say it.
Because why does the employer need it? Is like, why does this guy who's about to hire me need to know if I have these diseases or allergies? So that's kind of a sociological question, because it doesn't have anything to do with the law. It doesn't have anything to do with the ethics.
Oh, that may be true, but if you eliminate the other 2, does it automatically make it cultural?
Yeah.
It could be, there's scientific questions, there's selfish need questions, there's a whole host of other types of questions. I'm not sure what category it belongs into, but it might be just factual. Like, you want to know because it would inform you, say, for the ethical question or the legal question. But I'm not sure without more detail. So when you're looking at questions, it's just because you eliminated the other two doesn't mean the last one might be. Last one.
Should I give away my info, like my private information for the job? So we have terms of ethics.
Yeah. And why is that ethical?
Because just it's like a should question, and you don't need to give it. Like, there's plenty of other jobs that would probably hire you without this information.
I think tweaking that one to make it ethical might be, is there any like long-term harm to society or long-term harm to you? I know someone who wrote for a TV show in the 80s, and they sat down with everybody and they would write jokes. You know when like morning hosts talk to each other and they say jokes and it's like normal banter and you think they're just regular people talking? People write all of them. And that's what he wrote for. Bad jokes for a morning show. He wasn't called a writer though, he was called a producer. He didn't, no one really knows what a producer does. It's a title they give some people. And it means that they could pay him less. Because if they paid him according to a writer, you may have, I don't know if you've heard that there's a writer's strike on now. He belonged to the writers union at the time, and if they called him a writer, they'd have to pay him like a writer. He was a writer, he was in the room, they called him a writer, in the room, he wrote the jokes. But he accepted a job in which he had a different title, because at 23 years old, getting a job in Hollywood, he had no leverage whatsoever to change that. Part of it, he's wondering, by doing that, did he let down other writers by accepting their job? Because now they got a loophole to just sort of pay people a little less. And that might be enough of a question. Is doing something good for you harmful to all of others? Okay, are you group? 7. Oh, sorry, I thought those were brackets first. Go.
You want to choose the gender of the child. Religious/cultural for what would you choose? Because different cultures prefer having boys and girls because they think it's more important.
Where would it happen as a legal question because it's illegal, so you'd have to go to some shady place to.
Ooh, traveling different countries and researching the laws of what's allowed. Ooh.
And the last one is, should it be in your control? We chose ethical, would you like choose, or should you just let it be how it is?
And that's an ethical question. Excellent. Group 2.
You're a teacher and your 5th grade student mentioned that her parents gave her so much alcohol to drink that she got sick.
So for legal, we said, is it legal to give a 5th grade alcohol, or like what's the legal age to give a child alcohol? Culture, we said, is it right to give a 5th grade alcohol if it's like for a celebration or like in more
Right.
Like
Right.
cultural, because like in some cultures it's probably okay, but like here it's like
I had, and it's stereotypical, so of course it's stuck in my mind. We were going through the students, what's the drinking age in your country? And someone from Ireland was like, it's definitely when you're tall enough to reach the bar. Like, I've been in there and that's all they care about. I'm like, I'm pretty sure the law is different. Go. So that makes it cultural, because what the laws are and what people actually do are two different things.
and then for ethical we did like what type of parent gives a child alcohol, should they have their parental rights?
Ooh, yeah.
Should they be allowed to?
Should they be allowed? Because again, you phrased it as parental rights, but it's all in the best interest of the child. There are no parental rights, which is why they could ask that question. It may be interesting you to note, there was a time at this school where at the end of the year, the BFAs, the equivalent thereof, they were called something different back then, would go out and buy alcohol for all the grade 12s on the last night at school, so they didn't go drink somewhere else. I believe nowadays that would probably get the school either sued or shut down. And that wasn't all that long ago. I'd say not that all long ago, like before your lifetime, but not that long ago. Last one, group 6.
Our question was, you you're watching a streaming show on an illegal site and not paying for the original service.
So we put for legal, we put, is it legal to like watch this like this show for free, like without like paying? So that's a legal problem. And then ethically, like, is it morally wrong to deny the creators profit for their work? And then
Brandon, you got this one.
So for cultural, like, do other people from your culture watch shows on illegal websites?
It's just part of my culture, man. We just watch these
It's like
shows on these
you're-
websites.
It's kind of like how people would go over the speed limit and some people are like, oh, this is fine to do. So if everyone's around you is watching the shows for free, then it's kind of like, oh, well, everyone else is doing it, they're not getting in trouble, so I don't.
And it makes it totally a cultural question.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, thank you very much. Return to your seats. I may give you a similar task. No. It can be recycled or left on top. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we don't put them back?
You can just recycle it. Yeah, you can Okay, notebooks out. Pieces of paper, things that you scratch notes on. Laptop should be away. Pardon?
Dropped it on the ground.
No, I want you to break it. You and I agree with it. But I want you to look at it. Okay, we just left off last day with this as an example. We'll do a bit more about bias later in the year as well. The first couple of days are also a bit introductory. I mentioned about tests. This one, this particular article mentions is interesting because they didn't just use test score; they tested their IQ. IQ has a bad history of being abused in psychology, but there is some evidence for the idea that there is a intelligence quotient somewhere that it's trying to measure. The tests themselves can be a bit shady because sometimes they used to measure cultural questions. By the time they did this, they're not bad. They were able to show that a group of students whose teacher was told that they had scientifically shown that these students were about to experience some sort of brain growth and go up on IQ, and then after they told the teacher that, they literally went up on IQ. Not just their ability to test on a piece of paper or a test or the content, but they actually seemed to be, on an independent test, acting more intelligent in some kind of way. So it's almost... Question? Okay. Do you have a question, or are you discussing the last questions? Okay. So your teacher's belief in you really matters for your own education. We also know that there's discrimination against boys and girls in the school, depending on how your teacher identifies you, not how you identify yourself, because it's the perceptions of the person, which is one of the reasons why Canada has laws about the teachers having to recognize what students identify about themselves. Mr. Felix, who had Mr. Sullivan's job for many years, found this was the case at Brentwood as well. He decided to go back about 10 years and look how many students left the school every year, partway through, for reasons, whatever the reasons were, and look at the numbers. And he found out that regardless of which house they were in, so if they were in Mac, Hope, Allard, or Alex, or if they were in Privet, Ellis, Whittle, and Rogers, the numbers from each of those groupings of 4 dropped out at about the same rate. There was equal numbers. But the reasons were much different. The boy-identified houses were more likely to be kicked out, and female-identified houses, students were more likely to drop out for mental health. And as a house parent, when I reflect on that, yeah, the reason why someone is acting out, perhaps, and especially in our culture, if you're in one of the male-identified houses, might be a reason to expel you. And if you especially don't know how to access mental health, that might be the effect. Interesting. In terms of what we do that. One of the reasons why Brentwood now makes such a big emphasis on mental health is for that reason, to make sure students have reasons to stay, they have support when they can stay, and to ensure that they're at least, even if they're going home to get help, not going home because they've been expelled. We're trying to do that. Teachers are more likely to interrupt girls. My favorite pastime during the staff meeting, because they are so boring, was to just make up a little marker, and I would just count the number of times that Ms. Mertland, who was our deputy head of academics up until last year, Cheryl Mertland, was interrupted versus one of the other high muckety mucks. It was always much, much more. It's just a built-in bias. If you don't know you're doing it, you're probably going to do it without realizing it. Teachers are less likely to call girls to the front of the class to demonstrate, and less likely to direct their gaze towards girls while answering open-ended questions. A very interesting side study that was done to this. They're looking at why, on average, in this particular time, were the male-identified students doing better at math than the female-identified students. So they looked at what the math teachers were doing, and they found out that when a female-identified student put up their hand, they got help in under 10 seconds. When male-identified students put up their hand, the average wait time was about 50 seconds, almost a full minute. And they were like, well, that doesn't make sense. They're getting help faster. Yeah, but when you get help faster, sometimes in that period of time before you get help, you figure out the answer on your own. And that leads to an aha moment, which actually might increase your success in math, because it's you working it out that helps, not the teacher telling you the answer. So just as a general, if you're female identified, I should just never call on you. And then you will do better in class if I just establish that. I also like, as we're talking about bias, we have once again almost completely segregated ourselves in this class. It's really interesting how you do that completely naturally. We didn't even let them come up to the front. They're way at the back. This is clearly a certain side of the room, and they're just sort of in there because there wasn't enough room to go on that side. I'm assuming you talked about this before class, knowing what the topic was, just to illustrate it as an entire class. Well done. Grading with teacher bias. One of the ways that I grade is I'll take if I have like a paper test, I'll flip over the page so I don't see the name, and I'll mark like all page 1s at the same time and all page 2s. And that way I don't really know who I'm marking, because it could be like, oh, it's Philip. I hate Philip. And then, just really start marking hard. Or you go, oh, I know this person. They know what they're doing. Oh, this is kind of on the edge, but I know what they mean. And you mark well. If you want to mark honestly, you can't really know what they're going to do. Classroom teachers as well as external teachers grade the same set of math tests completed by both girls and boys. They found the classroom teachers systemically gave female students lower grades than external teachers did. One of the, this math difference has been going on for a while, and they've always been interested. One of the things that research found is that if you have to do a 3D modeling, so imagine an object in space, with a variety of different shapes, and then you have to rotate it in space. This is really important in chemistry and for certain types of math. And so to be able to see something in different rotations can be really important. They found on average, female-identified students did much more poorly on those tests. And they thought, aha, here's the reason. They also found if they told female-identified students that they actually on average do better, even though the research said the opposite, and then gave them a test, they did do better. So it's apparently only true because we believe it. Racial bias. We often don't like any of these reports because as teachers, we like to blame your parents, your previous school. I love blaming the previous school. Where did you come from? Yeah, those teachers didn't do a very good job. But all of these then have to put it back on ourselves. Black children make up only 18% of preschoolers, but 48% of children suspended more than once. Teachers increase the severity of suggested disciplinary action when the race of the teachers didn't match that of the child. We're going to do a bias test a little later on where you get to figure out, do you have some hidden biases as well? Doesn't stop at discipline, most likely be concentrated in low-income schools with less qualified teacher, fewer material resources, and so on and so forth. One of the bias, too, in all of these studies, when I look at this, where do all of these studies come from? United States. Canada's a really small country. We don't have it's not that we don't fund studies, it's just that we fund a lot fewer because we are much smaller. So a lot of the results we have are US bias. So as Canadians, we tend to go, well, obviously this doesn't happen here, and that's probably not true. In fact, it's almost certainly not true. And just in Canada, you get to add the word Indigenous to it because we have a really, really bad track history. Pre-services graded the performance of a student who appeared to have a migrant background, statistically significantly worse than of a student without a migrant background. In Canada, we have done that particular study, but it matters where you're a migrant from. Are you an immigrant, or are you just here because you're from the UK and we all have the same, king? And all of this is intended to be unconscious bias. So this is not someone walking out and identifying as someone who's racist. I identify as a racist. Hello. And people don't do that, obviously. This is a difficult conversation to have with people because everybody will say, I don't have these biases. Everybody has these biases. If you find someone who says they don't have these biases, you have found someone who very definitely probably has a bias and they don't know about it. Hopefully they're doing things to try and overcome it. Teachers' personal feelings about particular pupils influence their assessments on a regular basis. How many of you believe that a teacher has intentionally given you a lower mark because they didn't like you? How many of you believe a teacher has given you a higher mark because they liked you better? Sometimes apparently it works in your favor. I have generally found, I am not, this is an implicit bias, probably true. But also I have found that there's always, when you don't do it's because they don't like me is a very common thing. Do remember that all teachers are very tired and they don't care that much about you. It really, on their list of things to care about, coffee probably rates a lot higher than you. And most teachers are a sucker for a good story. So if you are doing poorly and then all of a sudden, you weren't studying that much, but now you are studying, you come to tutorial a couple times, they'll write a whole story in the next report about how great you are. Because it's like a little, Hallmark movie that's going on. How to eliminate it? Try and not know who the student is as much as possible whenever your grading stuff comes down to it. You want more staff diversity. We are a British-style boarding school, and many things, our staff seems to be fairly old and British at times. We need to do prioritize diversity in the hiring process and identify the bias when you're doing things. Common exams, like the June exams, help classes actually compare students and trends. One of the reasons we do them is just to look at bias. I'll post this if you'd like to read more about it. They've got some great links in there to some of the actual studies, so I'll put that on the Google Classroom. Next up, I think we talked about biased enough. This is one, a piece of, you can't see this. I clicked it on the wrong page. There, this is only goes up 2015, and these are Canadian media endorsements. So for a variety of papers and websites, Calgary Herald, Calgary Sun, Edmonton Journal, Edmonton Sun, Globe and Mail, who do they endorse in an election? This one goes a little longer, doesn't use quite as many. We've got more Canada-wide pieces in this one now. The Toronto Star, you would say, might just have a liberal bias. They're red all the way across the board. This sort of purpley blue section says conservative. That means they don't. They're trying to keep neutral. And Canadian Alliance, which existed for a very short amount of time. What would you say the bias of the newspaper reporting roughly is? Conservative. And newspapers will always have a bias. What is it about newspapers or websites that would, what is a built-in bias that they would have? Yep. So the people they're trying to sell to, so they want to sell more papers. Yep.
That their newspaper's better than other ones?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That is always true. Like our school is the best school. Privet House is the best house. The thing you identify is always the best. Yes. The individual biases of the writer would have a particular bias. This is more of like what's inherent to either a website or a newspaper. What is something that you could never question? Yeah.
Like the people who source the information.
The people who source the information, you could question those. They actually have rules about what type of people, like when they're a source and when they're not a source, and you have to verify it with other sources. But it could be that, yeah.
The bias of the people funding the newspaper.
Oh yeah, that's a huge one. One of the problems we have in Canadian media is our media, we may have multiple things, but they're all owned by the same person. And so who owns it, in a lot of times can determine what stories are printed. But even beyond that, what do you have to do as a newspaper or a website? Yeah?
Sometimes to make, like, target country.
You might have to do that as part of the process of business, but fundamentally, what do you have to do? Yeah.
Maybe like exaggerate information?
You might do that to accomplish your goal. You might, create sensational clicks so that people are like, oh, I want to read that. And then it turns out the title has nothing to do with the content.
To make money.
You have to make money. Fundamentally, you just have to make money. So are you ever going to question the capitalism in which you exist? No. There's a systematic bias in anything that's reporting that has to make money in the system that they're in. There are a few news organizations that are anti-capitalism. They're very rare, and they tend to go out of business because they're not focused on making money, which makes sense in this type of system. So if you ever feel the need to seize the means of production, just go read a newspaper and it will go away. Read some blogs online. You're not going to see certain types of point of view. It's always useful to recognize when you're not going to see those. So Canadian newspapers will have a Canadian bias. So you should probably also read UK newspapers, US newspaper. Ideally, newspapers in another language. Seeing what other countries say about Canada can be very eye-opening. Okay, next section. We are doing what ethics isn't. Because, and let's just outline it, we'll write the titles afterwards. Because before we can talk about what it is, we have to go through all the things that it isn't. So it's not going to be emotions, it's not going to be opinion, or it's not going to be subjectivism. Subjectivism is the idea that it changes based on what you believe. And it's not going to be based on relativism, which means that it changes based on the cultural area that you're in. I'm going to try and convince you that it's objective. So this is where we can start writing. These are notes. Although the thing you should probably write first, even though I went too fast, is what ethics isn't. I'll do that too. And one. This area, I have been told, is slightly confusing because we call this ethical subjectivism, and it's not a type of ethics, but it has the word ethics in it. Sometimes it's called ethical emotivism. And in this particular, I should move this around. This is looking awful. Let's move that up there. Let's move that there. There we go. In ES, or ethical subjectivism, moral views reflect our feelings. So if you feel it is good, it is good. If you feel it is bad, it is bad. You see this a lot in medical ethics, not as the ethical part, but in people's reaction to it in the popular culture. The first time we did a transplant, a heart transplant, an arm transplant, recently in the last few years we've done face transplants. But the first time that happened, it was like, ew, that's icky. And movies came out about someone who got like the arm of a murderer and they started going around and killing people. We had a lot of icky feelings about transplants. And a lot of debate on whether it was right or wrong to do that. Should you, if someone dies and they were a murderer and they donated out their organs, should you use them? Maybe you'll become a murderer. And once the ickiness went away, those questions all went away. It was ethical subjectivism. It feels icky, it feels wrong, therefore we shouldn't do it. But what this means is that if you say abortion is morally right, you're just saying I approve of it. In the same way you say, I like chocolate ice cream. It's something I like. If you say it's morally wrong, you just say I don't like it. In the same way that nobody likes mint chocolate ice cream. It is the worst possible ice cream. And if you like it, you're just objectively wrong. How many of you like mint chocolate ice cream? Oh my God, you walk among us looking like regular people. Last year I found one person in the entire class. Just one. I thought they were an anomaly. Now, if you say you like mint chocolate ice cream, and I say mint chocolate ice cream is simply unacceptable, it is a wrong thing, can we both exist at the same time and both be right? Yeah. No? Why not, Archie? Because I'm wrong. But if I say I don't like it, can I be wrong about that?
Yes.
How?
It's just a wrong opinion.
It's just your wrong opinion. But I don't like it. Like I actively hate it. If you make me eat it, it's like eating broccoli.
You can't have
Also, broccoli is evil, just to be clear. Broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, all evil. They are, and biologically, the same freaking plant. Somebody found this little evil plant, and they're like, I'm going to grow it for its leaves. You get kale. I'm going to grow it for its flower. You get cauliflower. I'm going to grow it for a different part of its flower. You get broccoli. You get Brussels sprouts, the seed spout things. They're all from the same freaking plant. That's why they all taste horrible. Disgusting. Despite Archie's insistence, I would think that if someone says I like chocolate ice cream and someone says I like vanilla ice cream, you can both be right. Because I can like things and you can like different things. No, there's not all in. There's only one acceptable thing to like. I do often agree with that. I mean, Privet House is the best house. I don't know what houses other people are doing. Probably just feeling sad that they're not in Privet.
In saying you like Privet isn't saying it's like a right or wrong opinion, because being right and saying you like something is completely different.
Being right and saying you like something.
Or comparing Privet, like saying it's the best, that's not saying you necessarily like it, because like being the best is like statistically proven that something is superior to another thing.
How if I say Privet is the best, how is that not the same? Sorry, say that again.
So if you're saying something's the best,
Yeah.
aren't you just saying it's like statistically superior to its competitors?
In what way?
I don't know, like if you did studies on like the the grades of the people in Privet versus like their athletic abilities. It's like they're basically the best.
But you just did now you've actually turned it into a non-opinion. When I said Privet is the best, it's an opinion. Because did I say how it's the best?
No, but you're indicating that it has to be a best in a certain way. Like, how is that the best?
Exactly. I didn't. I didn't say. But if you added something on there because they have the highest grade point average, for example, or the highest marks, that's actually measurable. That's no longer an opinion. You could go out and measure that, and you could figure out which is the best house. But you'd always have to qualify it and say it is the best house at this time, based on marks. Does everybody agree that the best house would be the one with the highest marks?
No.
So not everybody agrees with what the best house would be.
So if people say that something is the best, like an opinion, emotional based thing, isn't that necessarily like using that word in an incorrect way?
Oh, that's because English is not a language. It's like a bunch of languages wrapped up in a trench coat trying to pretend to be a language. We use the word best for all sorts of things. Someone may say, I have a theory about how this happened, and in science, a theory is a well-established proposition supported by multiple lines of evidence. Where in common parlance, it just means it's my random guess. So, yeah, you can use the word best in a lot of different ways. So context really matters. Yeah.
So if you're saying that something is the best, you're kind of like, and if it's proven, and it's proven to not be the best, then that's like saying that like your feelings on something are wrong. So it would be like the same thing as saying that mint ice cream, if people say is bad, then their opinion could be wrong because it's like you're using the word in the incorrect manner.
If, and absolutely true, but only if you have defined it. So if you said chocolate mint ice cream is the best because it contains more sugar than any other ice cream, then you have alerted everybody that you are measuring best by the amount of sugar, and that now they could go out and find out, no, vanilla contains the most. Like, you can actually be proven wrong. You are now making an objective statement. This is not subjectivism anymore. You have made it provable. Whereas when I say I disagree or approve or disapprove of, like, take a heavy topic, abortion, without anything else to go on, that's, if you're just saying it's good because I approve of it, or it's bad because I think it's icky, you are going purely based on emotion without any other information. If you provide more information, you might convert it into an objective statement. Yeah, and chocolate mint ice cream is just objectively wrong because it tastes bad. It's like people who drink their coffee black. They're just pretending to do that, obviously, because, you know, black coffee tastes disgusting. So if they're willing to do that just for the persona, what else are they willing to do? Yes?
I have a question. At the beginning, didn't we write that ethics is not opinions, but now...
Yeah. So this is one of the things, number one, that ethics isn't.
Oh, so
We're writing down the things that ethics isn't.
Oh.
So the first one is ethical subjectivism. And one of the reasons this area is confusing is because ethics calls this area of not ethics ethical. They have the word ethics in there. So someone who behaves like this and is like, if I feel it's good, that it is good, is someone who is using ethical subjectivism. We don't accept that as a form of ethics. And by we, I don't mean me. I mean like ethical professors, ethicists wouldn't accept that as a type of ethics. Well, I say that, but you know, there's probably some professors out there who do. Philosophy can be strange. The other part of it is that right and wrong doesn't really exist. If I like vanilla and you like chocolate mint ice cream, then I think we can both get along because I may like it, but I can also recognize you like, and there's no harm, there's no ethical question, it's just an opinion. Some things are just an opinion.
Mint's better than vanilla.
Mint is better than vanilla?
Yeah.
Mint is gross in everything. It belongs only in gum, and its only purpose is to make your breath smell nicer. It tastes horrible. Pardon?
You've never had after 8 chocolates?
Don't say that.
Oh God, that's what my parents would give me. Oh, no, sorry, not my parents. My grandma, as a form of torture. Because I remember the first time. Here's a little chocolate. I'm like, I'm going to get chocolate. This is going to be amazing. I'm going to eat chocolate at my grandma's house, and I put it in my mouth. You know what it was? It was freaking mint. It tasted disgusting. It's a core memory unlocked. Yes.
Do you mean chocolate mint or mint chocolate chip?
Is there a difference?
Whoa.
Like the swirly one.
I would not make the distinction. However, do you have a preference?
Yeah, chocolate mint is poo. But
Mint chocolate?
mint chocolate chip is good.
Oh,
Wait, what's different?
oh,
Mint
interesting.
chocolate, like the ice cream, like chocolate mint, like
Oh.
like chocolate and ice cream with mint flavor. It's like it tastes like
Yeah. Interesting.
I mean,
Interesting. Now, I'm going to leave you with this thought.
it seems strange to say that Hitler was a hero.
If you say, if you're an ethical subjectivist, then not only is there no room for disagreement, you can't actually say that anybody's bad. You're not saying like, oh, Hitler was bad. You're saying, I personally dislike him. But if you like him, it's like different flavors of ice cream. That's okay. He might be more your flavor than mine. And if you think that sounds weird, you're probably not an ethical subjectivist, which I would suggest is good. Although, if everything I say, the majority of philosophers would agree, and so on. There are a few who are, all on board with ethical subjectivism. It is really tolerant. Karl Popper talked about the paradox of tolerance in that. Hold it. I want to make sure I don't run out of time. What time do we end? 9:35? Okay, we got a couple more. Next one.
I mean, I can't argue with that.
Now, we're going to go into a little detail in subjectivism because in both logic and in ethics, the difference between the subjective and the objective is going to be a relatively big difference. One of these is an objective statement, and one of these is a subjective statement. Let me get out the class dojo. Class dojo. I'm going to ask someone at random. Archie Baldwin, you are the first to get points in this class. If I haven't, those of you in Science 10 probably know, I occasionally when I want to ask someone at random, so this is one of the ways I try and combat bias. I'll take out an app and I'll have it choose the student. Because it doesn't care whether I know you, whether I don't know you, it's picking randomly. If you're away for a period of time, it keeps track, so your points won't increase. So they're like, oh, maybe I should ask you more questions to make you more even in the future and deliberately pick you a couple of times. And also, if you kind of like hide in the back and it can never quite see you. When I was in school in grade 7, I was about as tall as I was now. And there was a certain kid in my school, he always sat right beside me because he used my body kind of as a shield from the teacher, so he'd never ask questions. Whereas if I'm using this, just picks it randomly. So Archie, consider the two questions. Which is subjective? A. Because oh dear, why is it doing that? Now, I'm not going to ask you why. I'm going to ask someone else. Why is this? Subjective? Okay, possibly. And of the two of them, I'm going to ask someone else either why that's subjective or you can tell me why B is objective, given that we've eliminated it. And add.
Well, gluten is in bread. Have a fat.
You get protein.
Right. It is, I like the way you just cover that it's a fact. What's the difference between a fact and an opinion? Yeah?
Facts are like factual. So you can't really think, well, in my opinion, the earth is flat and gluten doesn't exist.
Oh.
You can't
Oh, you may have started something. Yes?
the earth is flat, period.
Yeah.
Opinions are more like personal thoughts and like rather than what everyone else is thinking. Just kind of what you think is fact.
So personal thoughts than everyone else. I like that everyone else because it also brings in other people. Can you be wrong about facts?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you be wrong about your opinion? No. I mean, unless you think you can be wrong about whether or not you like chocolate mint ice cream. I mean, I suspect, not suspect, you could lie to yourself. That's a really weird way to be wrong about it, though. Yes?
A fact is something that's true, and an opinion is a decision on how
Can,
they want to think.
well, can't opinion also be true?
Yeah, an opinion can be a fact as well.
Oh, that didn't help at all. You now just made them both facts. Yes?
Opinion is like a fact that's true, or fact is like true, and then opinion is like true to like yourself, like your own.
Yeah, your own thing. So facts require a lot, and you could be wrong about facts. You can't be wrong about opinions, really. I mean, you can lie to yourself, I guess.
Like, an opinion can never be right or wrong, and then a fact has to be right or wrong to be a fact.
Yeah, like you said, there is gluten in bread. You said that very confidently, and yet I have seen gluten-free bread. Are you wrong? Yeah, it is bread with gluten too. So, I mean, there are facts that we could bring up. You could be right. It could be the cafeteria is serving regular bread. It could be that the cafeteria is serving gluten-free bread, and you didn't know it this whole time, and you could be wrong. But it's not whether you're right or wrong. It's that you can be right or wrong that makes it an objective statement. Whereas this one, if I said cafeteria food is the best food ever, how many of you think cafeteria food is the best food you've ever tasted? Entirely normal result. Go to university. Every student who's ever come back from university is like, oh my God, our dining hall is the best thing ever. Were you guys, you weren't there when Will McDonald came back and talked to the house? Will McDonald?
Are you looking for me?
Yeah. Will McDonald came and talked to the whole house, like, I don't know if it was a year ago or two, it wasn't you. Assistant house captain from a couple of years ago, I guess. A few years ago. You know who Thomas McDonald is?
Yes.
Older brother. Came back, 5 of them, and I asked them for what is the best advice you could give to the students here? Given now you've gone to university for 1 year, you've come back, and I'm expecting like the importance of doing your prep, and their best advice was go to the dining hall and eat all the food you can. And everyone's like, yeah, I'm living off rice and some chicken once in a while. The dining hall is amazing. So apparently compared to university food, things are going to get a lot worse. So the test of thumb, do you know where the rule of thumb comes from? You have a rule of thumb? Nobody knows? The rule of thumb is if you have to beat your wife and children, you must use a rod no thicker than your thumb. So, like, I have big thumbs, so, like, Ms. Hanley's in trouble. This is a biblical verse. If you're going to beat your children, the rod can't be bigger than your thumb around. Otherwise, you're a bad person and can get in trouble with the authorities. But if the rod is as wide or smaller, that's totally okay in the Bible.
You like pull your thumb up.
Yeah. No, you get a rod the thickness of. You don't use your actual thumb. What? Wait, did you think a rod that long?
Yeah, like a pencil.
I'm going to beat you. That's not going to work. Yeah.
You shouldn't beat your wife and children. Well,
What?
that's an opinion.
That's an opinion. Okay.
Do whatever you want.
Finish off those notes. Again, should you be writing verbatim notes? So a reminder, if I was to write these notes, I'll spend some time because I told people to put their computers away. It's like, there's a new one. I can type. And I said, and if I give you enough time, you could probably write all the words down. I'm also telling you, you shouldn't. So here's your notes. I would be writing like subjectivism. Only applies in certain cases. What would be a shortened form of that? Sure. Opinions, some areas, and then I've got examples. 1, 2, I'd probably go calf equals best. Food, no, that's not going to work. Bread, this isn't right. Garbage. I'm going to stand right in the way. This is probably really annoying. Bread has gluten. And then I would label it just like I did here. Rule of thumb. And I'd probably just write rule, because who needs that whole thing about beating women and children? Two people say opposite. Both can be right. And there might be a shorter way for you to say that. So shorten things down as you go along. Write them out. This class does have a number of notes in addition to the discussions, because we're doing stuff that's brand new that I don't necessarily. How many of you have done objective and subjective definitions in English class? Sometimes English class will do logic as well, so I'm always curious if that happens. Oh, and now that I scroll, those things don't move. Now, in the last 5 minutes, this one, we've done the other two as groups. This one I'm going to have you do for homework. My voice just cracked right there. Due next day. It shouldn't, I think, take you that long. What I want you to come up is with 2 or 3 ethical questions. So now, not all the different cultural, legal, scientific, just ethical questions. What are some ethical questions about this scenario? Your classmate asks to see your homework because they didn't finish theirs. They were in the hospital all night the night before with their sick mother. Your classmate asks to see your homework because they didn't finish theirs. They have previously asked you for your homework and your friends. Your friend wants you to lie on their behalf, probably about cheating on their homework. A family member has committed a crime, and the police are looking for them. This is homework for tonight and tomorrow night, as needed, because we don't have class results. So, next class, we've got 2 preps. And 5 minutes right now. And I'm stopping the live stream.